y'all. My name is Chantal. I use she, her pronouns. I am the organizing director with 350 New Hampshire. Just a little bit about me. I've been with 350 New Hampshire now for 3 summers, 2.5 years. Prior to that, I was working for a very long time within New Hampshire politics, both in electoral campaigns and in legislative. But that's a little bit about me. You're about to hear a lot from me. So I'll dive into who we are as a collective. The 350 Network Council is a network of the 16 largest independent 350 affiliate organizations around the U.S. We place-based organizations, building people power for climate justice. We're winning grassroots campaigns that stop the expansion of the fossil fuel industry and, a swift transition for our communities to 100% of renewable energy. For the past 10 years, we have increasingly been taking this fight to the fossil fuel industry. And for the past few years, we've also been forcing this on utilities. Next slide. Great. So for this slide and the next one, we're just going to go over our key takeaways, what we're hoping that we take away from this training this evening. First, we want to learn messaging guidelines for talking about utility justice with our neighbors, elected officials, and so on. We would like to leave here having learned about some of the tactics and strategies for making sure our voices are heard. We want to leave here making sure we learned how to push back against the industry's misinformation, and maybe not entirely. I think it's okay if we still leave here with some questions, but at least we're going to start that journey. And we also want to make sure that we're practicing these skills in the breakouts that we're going to hold near the end of the training. Next slide. Great. All right. For what this training is not, we are not sharing any detailed polling or messaging data today. This is strictly based on our experiences and what we have been implementing as far as tactics and strategies that we've seen be successful in the field. Great. Okay, I'm going to take a breath. Feel free to do it with me. Whew. And we are going to jump into part 2. We're going to review some basics right now. So what is utility justice and why does it matter? So electric utilities are at the heart of the climate crisis and the heart of the inequitable concentration of wealth and power that leads to a deeply unjust society. That is from a People's History of Utilities. We have many electric utilities, especially investor-owned utilities. We call those IOUs. They're blocking the transition to renewable energy while raising rates on working families. We can't get off the fossil fuels reliance without action from the utility companies. Holding utilities companies accountable is a critical way to bring fights for economic and climate justice together to build a fairer and more sustainable society and future that meets the everyday people's needs. Next slide. So before I dive in, if you hadn't attended our first training about the basics of electric utilities, it's why and how we're fighting them, you can copy this link here or follow it and watch it there later. I highly recommend you do so if you're new to this issue. But for now, I'm going to go over the top lines from that training so that we're all on the same page here. Awesome. Okay. First and foremost, electric utilities provide us with electricity service by generating and or procuring electricity. We call that generation. Transporting electricity, sometimes across long distances. Transmission, you see the transmission lines, especially through open areas. Delivering electricity to our homes, distribution. Two, the majority of Americans have to get these services from private for-profit utilities. As mentioned before, they're also known as investor-owned utilities, IOUs. These utility companies are monopolies. They are dominating the electric grid, and for most of us, it's eliminating any opportunities for competitors to offer better or lower rates. Here we have just a little graphic to kind of give you just like a visual aid. We have the power plant, which is generating electricity. If we want to think about it in clean terms, that could be like, I don't know, a windmill or a solar panel or 100. And then we have our transmission lines that carry the electricity through the long distances. And then you have the distribution lines, which we see outside our homes and along the streets, which carry the electricity to our houses and residential areas. Okay, 3. For-profit utilities own the majority of our electricity delivery and transportation infrastructure. So that's the grid. And as well as most of the generation infrastructure, power plants. For-profit utilities are fossil fuel companies. They have historically invested in fossil fuel assets. It's been for well over 100 years. And the electricity that they sell is largely reliant on fossil fuels, which are not sustainable. Okay. We'll fly through these last couple. So for-profit utilities are guaranteed their income through a regulatory agreement with state regulators. Public utility commissions are typically who they go through. We call those PUCs. The companies have incredibly deep pockets to go ahead and buy political influence and have successfully captured plenty of PUC's favors across the country. For-profit utilities fight anything that threatens their profits. This includes both being for and against clean energy when it suits their agenda. For-profit utilities coordinate at all levels, from local to regional to national and even some international. So just to tie this all up in a big bow, for-profit utilities have amassed great power and public acceptance for over 100 years, and they serve the great majority of our communities, or disserve us. Depends, I don't know. 2, these companies relentlessly pursue profit and go to great lengths to defend their fossil fuel assets. All the while, 27% of Americans cannot afford their monthly utility bills as it is. And I can speak for New Hampshire, it's just getting worse. And 3, what we need to do in order to fight this is build power and push back on a national platform. So enter in utility justice. Okay, one more time, I'm going to take a breath now. And we're going to keep going. Okay. So what is utility justice? I just gave you a lot of information on kind of like the background. But utility justice is a national movement to hold electric and sometimes gas utility companies and profiters accountable to providing us with affordable, clean, and reliable electricity or utilities. Utility justice centers the impact on our communities and has an intersectional lens. And next slide. Oh, wait. Yeah, okay, you have activity. Yay. I don't think I added anything to this slide. I'm so sorry you have a blank slide. But anyways, if y'all wouldn't mind indulging me for just a moment, I'm going to ask that we like collectively like take a moment and close our eyes. I'm not going to close mine because I'm reading my notes. But y'all, please close your eyes. And I can't see you either, so I'm trusting that your eyes are closed. Okay, eyes are closed. And we're going to take a breath in and out. And I want you to just think about like your community, the people that you know around you, the people that you love, the people that you interact with on the daily, whether they're your colleagues, people you volunteer with. Just sit with that for a moment. Okay. So you're free to open your eyes and rejoin me here, although I still can't see you. While you do that, and I'm going to wait, Dory, I'll tell you when to go. I'm going to put a question on the screen in a moment, okay? And when that question comes up, I'm going to ask that you type up your response to that question in the chat. But, and this is a big one, do not hit send yet, okay? When I'm going to give everyone a solid minute, 60 seconds, I'm going to time it right here on my phone to type up your response to the question that's coming up on your screen. And then I'll give a little countdown, and then I'm going to say send. That's the magic word. It's nothing crazy. Just send. And then we're all going to send it at once, okay? All right. So just remember, wait until I say I'm going to be very excited when I hit send, like when I say send. So like I keep saying send, it's you get me. We can go to the next slide. So my question for y'all. What effects, if any, has your utility company had on you or your community? If you feel comfortable, please provide, your state and city with your response. I'm going to give everyone a minute starting right now. Okay, so I'm going to read some off here if that's okay. So what I'm seeing, I see Kip made it difficult to hook up. My friend's solar panels. Yep. I've had personal experience, family experience with that, but also provided rebates on heat pumps and other energy efficient appliances and gadgets. It was no problem when you hooked up your panels. Kate says PG&E has been convicted of manslaughter multiple times by blowing up neighborhoods and starting mega fires. Bananas. Lou, I see high costs in Merrimack, New Hampshire, and yes, very familiar with that. They've acted, so I have Catherine says they have acted to prevent unbuilding of solar energy in a very sunny place. A quarter of San Diegans are reported to be behind on their energy bills. Damn. I have Joan who says Northwestern Energy has blocked clean energy progress in our community and state. Feel that too here. Our state legislature has successfully done that in New Hampshire, so I feel that. Thank you everybody so much. I'm continuing to read through these. I've heard a lot about PG&E. Even as someone who is on the East Coast, and my goodness, my heart is with y'all. And I did want to note that Dory did put a comment in the chat, and we would like to just formally apologize for the disruption. I'm not quite sure that's the first time for me, and I can kind of let Dory take it from there.
Thank you, Chantal. And thank you to everybody for sharing your stories. And yes, that was unfortunate that happened. And it is unfortunate that it happened today. And we actually were a little prepared for it because that's happened to people in other virtual mass calls. But let's refocus on, let's not be distracted by people who are trying to tear things down. let's focus on what we're trying to build here together. So, why are we here today? We are here to learn about messaging and talk about messaging. So, why is it so important to talk about messaging? The way we talk about things matters. It is a part of literally everything we do together as humans. It is woven into our worlds and our lives. And so we want to use it as a tool to help us achieve the goals that we have. So what we've done here is we're going to be talking about some advice that we have for good messaging. This is, of course, not an end-all be-all for what messaging should look like. This is just some tips that work for us and that we want to share with others. So the three things that I'm going to highlight to get us started here, and then we'll go more into depth, are telling stories from our communities, the importance of telling stories, and especially telling stories about impact, as we did earlier, just now with Chantel, and making clear demands. In our case, making clear demands that we want affordable, clean, reliable energy for everybody. And then the last part is going to be kind of a big section where we dive into a few things. Educate, educate, educate. Education is the name of the game. In particular, I think with utility justice right now, education is really important. The utilities do have a lot of power, and education is a big part of how we can build power against them so that we are building a base that we can then stand on to start to reach for some real opportunities and wins. Okay, so, oops, I wasn't supposed to show you guys that yet. Why is it important to tell stories? Let's talk a little bit about stories. I want to see some answers in the chat. And also, thank you for that joke. Yeah, PG&E, they knew what we were up to, and they were like, can't have that. But anyway, why is it important to tell stories? Can somebody throw an answer in the chat? Thank you, Catherine. Humans are wired for stories. So true. Stories stick with people. Also true. Data does not sway opinions as much as personal stories. Connect people, reach people emotionally. These are great answers. And I knew that those would have been your answers even if you hadn't seen my slide accidentally. So you guys, you said it. Stories raise emotion. Emotion, we know, is what leads to action. Stories put a human face to the problem. They allow us to really focus on the impact, the human impact of what's happening. And we remember stories. We are hardwired for stories, us as humans. We remember them over statistics. And Colin, yes, we make meaning of the world around us through story. It's such a fundamental part of how we think. And the reason why I wanted to make this its own slide is because it's worth naming that we do live in a culture that is extremely information and fact obsessed right now. But research and experience tells us over and over and over that stories are the tool for connecting to human emotion. We remember stories that make us feel, and our feelings are what drives us to action. So those of us, myself included, who love facts and love information, we got to remind ourselves of that sometime. Okay, so next we're going to talk about clear demands, and I'm going to pass the mic to our friend Larry in Chicago. So Larry, why don't you take it away?
Great. Thanks, Dory. So in our campaigns, we want to make clear demands about the ways utilities should operate. But first, we need to ask some essential questions about how those utilities actually operate and in whose interest, especially these investor-owned utilities or IOUs. As you can see on the slide, there are several important questions that need to be posed to fully understand the problem and how to start thinking about the issue in terms of economic justice for people who pay utility bills, which is all of us. And so I want to take a moment to pause here and think about the impacts that you shared earlier in the chat. and I want to do one more exercise here. I want you to imagine how you'd like your utility to operate in your community. Think for a few moments, and then you can go ahead and put them into the chat, and I'll just we'll go from there, and we'll pick it up in a minute. Put people ahead of profits, operate as a public good, certainly. Have a utility be a partner in meeting the state's climate goals, exactly. Public-owned surplus, provide green power to people, not coal and methane. Polluting power to data centers and cryptocurrency. Oh, that is huge. We own it and make the critical decisions about how it will run. Not be able to influence policy or politics. Exactly. I know in Chicago, we're working on that one especially. Community should be the driver and profit should not be the goal. Local generation and storage, certainly. So, there's a lot of great ideas that have just come across the chat. This is a lot of what we're already sort of talking about. So thank you for putting in these ideas. Can I go to the next slide, please? So I guess, I was asking that question about what is your vision for utility and how it should operate. So the 350 Chicago Network Council has thought of some of the answers for these questions with some simple and direct demands. To make electricity to power homes and gas to cook with and heat our homes at a lot more affordable, for utility bill payers. We believe these simple demands shown in this slide will make energy for everyone more affordable, cleaner, safer, and more reliable, which we believe is a basic human right. You can go to the next slide. An example of this at the local level is the work 350 Chicago is doing in Illinois. Right now, we are engaged in public outreach at events across the Chicagoland area to gain signatures in support of the Utility Transparency Act. We set up tables at various events such as eco fairs, farmers markets, nature fairs, and recycling events to ask people to sign postcards like this right here. Typically, these are audiences that we're going to be engaging with who are open to our messages. And to further outreach, in Chicago, we've partnered with the Citizens Utility Board, which is one of the largest watchdogs in Illinois about utilities issues. And we're working on them about the utility transparency issues. And in the slide, you will also see several demands in the Utility Transparency Act to blunt the lobbying activities of investor-owned utilities in Illinois. These IOUs should be charging shareholders for their lobbying activities and not the people who actually pay the bills. And right now, what it is that the utilities can just take pennies out of every time you pay your bill and allocate it towards things like paying for, memberships in trade associations or hiring lawyers, lobbyists, and witness to basically try to raise your rates. And they also do things like purchase insurance to save investors from potential losses, or buy goodwill and advertising. And the other thing that this would do is require public hearings for any time they want to raise the rates. And so in Chicago and Illinois, IOUs should be charged their shareholders and not Illinois bill payers for their lobbying activity. And to tie all this together, when we are out at our tabling activities, we basically will also emphasize our work with the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition in Illinois to create a renewable energy economy in the state so that energy is clean, safe, reliable, and affordable. And so I will pass it back to Dory.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you for sharing the amazing work that y'all are doing over in Chicago. We have some similar legislation here in California that we've been kind of excited about. So I love seeing the parallels across the country. All right, so I'm going to move into the next section. We talked about telling stories. We talked about making clear demands. And just a quick shout out about those demands. In the previous slide, where we had the 350 Network Council's demands, you might notice these demands are a little bit more general. They're not necessarily connected to like a piece of legislation or an act of policy that we're trying to push right now. And I just want to shout that out to make it clear to people that you can have demands for your vision of what your utility should look like, even if you're not sure yet what you're pursuing to make that change happen. And it's still a good way to educate and raise the profile of the issue. Okay, so next we're going to talk about education. As I mentioned already, education is key for utility justice. It's key for everything, but we talk about it a lot right now with utility justice because for a very long time, these utility companies have been operating as kind of this accepted status quo. And despite a lot of the bad things that they're doing, they've kind of operated without scrutiny. There's definitely some exceptions, like PG&E is a terrible company that has done some really terrible things and killed people in very high-profile incidents. But in general, across the country, what we are seeing is that in the past several years, people are paying more attention to for-profit utilities than they ever have before. And a big part of that is because of how much rates have been increasing. It's really just accelerated in the past 15 years. And so the utility companies know that they are under scrutiny, and they are being very proactive about protecting themselves, and they are spreading a lot of misinformation. And sometimes they're doing this in very well-funded comms campaigns. They're definitely doing this in California. I have seen some really stupid mailers that I know are coming from utility-funded operations. And so we need to push back, and education is essential for pushing back against that misinformation. And like I said before, also just really building the awareness and building the base. So related to that, the more that we do educational outreach and run campaigns that chip away at their power. Again, we can do education without specifically like saying we have a bill, although it is even better when we have something specific in action. The more we can build support for our demands and combat misinformation. So again, it's about creating the environment and finding solutions and opportunities for wins, bringing people together. Hey, we're all experiencing, we're all mad about this, right? What can we do about it? We don't have to have the perfect solution to start bringing people together and talking about this issue and educating people on how bad it is and educating ourselves. So let's break down the things that education is doing. Education is raising awareness of the issue and its impacts. It is pointing blame on the role that for-profit utilities have in the current crises of affordability, climate, health, housing, highly intersectional issues. Education can serve to myth bust because there is a lot of misinformation out there. And also, education allows us to have more conversations and discuss solutions. And I do have a little asterisk there, which I will get to closer to the end of this presentation, talking about solutions. Okay, so raising awareness. We already talked about telling stories. It's very important to tell stories of the human impacts, the human face to impacts. And you can sprinkle in there some impactful facts, a light little sprinkling. We're not relying on facts too much, but definitely a well-sourced fact can help you to raise awareness about the issue. For example, in San Diego, I like to share with everybody who I talk to about this issue that over a fourth of San Diegans cannot pay their electric bill. And because of this, they owe back payments of $600 or more. Over a fourth of San Diegans, that is their situation. And that is a truly shocking number, and it does truly shock a lot of people who I talk to about it. And I'm sure they remember. Another thing about raising awareness is that when you're talking about impacts, again, this is a highly intersectional issue, so you can relate the impacts of utility justice to issues that your audience cares about. So, for example, when I'm talking to people who are really focused on housing affordability, utility justice is a natural extension of the housing instability and affordability crisis. When we're talking to people who are pretty well versed on climate, they care a lot about climate change. I tell them how SDG&E is owned by Sempra, which is an international gas distribution company. So, you know, we can relate the many different impacts to the audience. And then as we're raising awareness, we also are pointing the finger. Name, blame, and shame is the game. And one thing I want to talk about when it comes to pointing the finger and really calling out who is to blame for this, There are a lot of technical people with a lot of technical knowledge in the energy space. And I do find that an experience that a lot of people have is feeling intimidated by that and feeling like because I don't have the ability to like really get into the nitty gritty of all of these technical details, that means that I should just be silent. I'm afraid to say who's to blame because somebody's going to argue with me. And I just really want to remind everybody here, and I have to remind myself of this all the time. I really do. My knowledge is not what's on trial. Okay. The utility is who's on trial. The utility and what they are doing to our communities and the impact that that's having, that is who's on trial. So let's talk about that with an example. Talk about people are very angry about rates right now, especially here in California, but across the country, definitely across the country. So people are asking, why are my electric bills so high? Or they're complaining, they are so high, I don't understand. Unfortunately, this example is actually an example of our opposition doing some very good finger pointing and playing the blame game. And what utilities are saying is they're blaming clean energy. They're really kind of trying to get ahead of this, and they're saying it's clean energy's fault. It's not our fault. It's clean energy's fault. It's all these stinking regulations that you're putting on us that are making rates high. Or they're blaming things like wildfire mitigation or something else. Feel free to throw in the chat if you've heard some excuse from your utility that has just blown your mind. Share it with us. I'd love to hear it. And this is a little frustrating because there is a little bit of a grain of truth. These are like half truths that there are a lot of different things that go into making rates. And there are different things that influence how high rates are. So this was literally me yesterday. I was in a meeting and there were all these San Diego Gas and Electric people there, and they were giving these technical presentations, and I was doubting myself. I was starting to doubt. I was like, oh God, what am I going to talk about in my public comment? Like, how am I going to respond to all of this stuff? I literally felt like the woman in this meme. And we do have an answer. You do not have to be able to respond to all of their technical details to be able to very effectively make your point. So this is a situation that I know happens, and I want to ask people, I want to take a moment here and ask everybody, or actually maybe I'll ask for a brave person to raise their hand and answer this. What do you say to this? Somebody is asking, why are rates so high? Maybe you're in a space where there's a lot of technical people. I don't know. You're like at a rate case at the CPUC. What do you say to this in this situation? How do you point the finger and put blame where blame is due? Catherine, I see you there. I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear what you'd have to say.
Ask the question again so my brain can wake up.
I think that the question is, why are rates so damn high? How do we answer that question?
Well, we typically answer it with the one on the right, overspending on transmission, building wires and poles that aren't needed, and claiming that they are needed. That's the big one that comes to my mind.
Okay, great. Yeah, you guys have got some prepared talking points, so you default to your talking points.
Yeah.
Let me check the chat here. Seeing some activity.
Well, and also just the profit motive, pure and simple. I mean, we live in a very capitalistic society, and it's normal to expect profit for things that maybe we shouldn't be expecting profit for.
Thank you, Catherine. And I'm seeing comments in the chat that are reflecting what you're saying. Yes, we can stick to what we know. And because we know that this is true, the profit motive is really the reason why we are seeing such high rates. Joan, did you want to add something?
Well, I'm in Montana, and we have Northwestern Energy, which is tentacles are everywhere in the legislature, just everywhere. And they are essentially guaranteed a 10% profit, and that profit works if they build expensive facilities, like they just finished a methane burning plant, by the way, without proper permitting on the edge of the Yellowstone River, in land that is partially zoned agricultural. It's up and running now. We tried to fight it. That will give more to their shareholders than a wind farm or a solar farm in terms of return on equity. So they make more if they build polluting energy. That's what we say.
Thank you, Joan. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's like straight from our Utility Justice 101 training, as we talked about how utilities are extremely incentivized because they get guaranteed a return on equity. Okay, so I just realized I'm like totally over time, so let me keep moving along here. But I'm seeing that this room, we know a lot here about utilities. I'm seeing a lot of people who know a lot. So I kept it pretty simple in this presentation. How do we point the finger? Well, first of all, for-profit utilities are for-profit. They are always prioritizing profit, and it's coming at our expense. That much I know. They continue to increase rates more and more under a broken system with little to no accountability. These are pretty general, kind of high-level talking points. Here's just an example of a story. You could, tell a story. What I know is that my bills in 2 years have increased hugely, and that's not right. And I shared this fact earlier. This is what I do know, is that it's not right. San Diegans can't afford to pay their bills. There's a systemic issue here. So don't come at me with your nitty gritty arguing with me. I know that this is a problem, and I know utilities are to blame. All right, and then a little myth busting while we're at it. We do have some good data, and here's a nice little source for anybody who would like to put this in their pocket. There was a report that looked at the 29 states with clean energy standards and found that those standards equated to about 3.5% of your average retail electricity bill. So it's safe to say that this is something that is highly overstated by the for-profit utilities. Okay. Now I'm going to move into recognizing industry talking points. I'm going to go through these pretty fast because we're a little behind time here. But we were just discussing some industry talking points. I want to share with y'all a few more. What are some things that we see the industry do? What are some of their talking points? And then really quick, I also just want to say that I am sharing these industry talking points with you all because we are at this training to learn how to talk about utility justice. And part of talking about this well is being able to recognize and call out industry talking points when we see them and hear them. Normally, if I were just talking to a member of the public, I probably would not be telling them what the industry talking points are. We don't need to help them by planting those messaging points into people's brains ourselves. But what are we seeing? We're seeing fear mongering, okay? If we transition to green energy, we'd have to pay more for utilities. If we change the status quo, it's going to be mismanaged. The devil you don't know is worse than the devil you know. And we can counter that with comedy. I really appreciated, again, that person who made that joke about PG&E. When we're feeling fearful, comedy is an effective tool. Other things that we're seeing, blaming rooftop solar for high rates, saying, once again, the green transition will raise prices. And then one thing that I was experiencing recently is utilities flooding the field with all of these stories of all these things that they're doing that are good. If you got rid of us, we wouldn't be doing all this good stuff. And to that we say, no. We know who is to blame. It is the for-profit utilities and the people who enable them. And also we're going to do some myth busting. This is a place where, having some facts can be helpful to call out misinformation. A couple of other things. I can't stress this enough. Remember your strength. Leverage your identity. You are a community member. You are constituents. You're a neighbor. You're a person with a lived experience. If you're an expert, that's great. If you're an expert in utility policy or engineering, fine. If you're not, you're an expert in other areas. And then I already said this, but don't bring up their points first. If you hear them, call them out, but you don't need to repeat it for them. Okay, and this is just a summary. I'm going to skip this because of time. But if you want to throw some opposition talking points into the chat that you've seen, we would love to hear it. Wisdom of the Commons. I'd love to know what kind of dirty messaging they're engaging in. Okay. Let's see. I think I'm passing it to Chantel now. You go, Chantel.
I'm back, y'all. Hey, Chantel. Obviously, wow. Okay, I'm going to continue. We're going to discuss some solutions. I'm going to rapid fire through this as well before I hand it off to Patricia for some tactics, do's, and don'ts. But when we're discussing solutions, so earlier we had a little bit of an asterisk flags on solutions. The reason why we have solutions in the education session instead of like its own thing is because there's a lot of different possible solutions to these issues. And sadly, in the energy realm, which I'm sure we're all aware of, we are seeing a lot of division within our climate activism community and beyond. So our strategy and philosophy at the 350 Network Council is that we want to be strongly grounded in what unites us, the impacts and guilt of the fossil fuel utility industry. And we want to seek solutions that make sense in the context of our community and our current opportunities or the current moment in time. Now, there was a lot of information that Dory went through. So just to do a little reset and digest for a moment, we already know how much I love to breathe over here. Before we jump into some real tactical and strategic thinking, I would love if you could put in the chat which cat you're feeling like, either 1, 2, 3, or 4. Personally, I love both cats and dogs. But like, you know, I'd love some feedback. I think personally, I'm feeling like a 1, and that's just because like, that's my life. Oh, Patricia, same. Yes. Patricia and I are in the same boat. I'm seeing like a good amount of 3s, 4s. Hell yes. Okay, Ronald loves horses. Fair enough. Can we say like a horror, like, 4 might be the default. Noelle, I feel like that tracks. And I love it. So many 3s, right? This is feeling really great. I love the woohoo, let's do this. Like the excitement in this room, I feel it. I just, and if you are a 1 or 2, like that's totally okay. We're going to talk through some of these tactics. I think a 1 is just like where I'm at all times. Just kind of like everything's happening at once. But anyways, thank you all so much again for once again indulging me in something fun. I am going to now hand it over to Patricia. So Patricia, feel free to take it away, friend.
All right. Thank you, Chantel. And that exercise was wonderful. I can feel like the lift in my spirit from that. And I think in my head, I went, I'm 1, no, I'm 3, I'm 4, I'm 2. And it's like, I'm all of them. So I think a lot of us, it's like depending on the minute. But anyway, so my name is Patricia Moore. I am the executive director at 350 Sacramento, or Northern California. My pronouns are she, her. And we're getting near the top of the hour, so I'll do a little bit of just rushing through this. I'm going to talk about some tactics and then some like literal messaging do's and don'ts. The tactics is, you read through this list, it's meetings with electeds, meetings with local groups and nonprofits, hearings and public comments, tabling, door-to-door canvassing, which we're going to learn a little bit about in one of the breakouts. Actions and rallies, digital content, getting published in media, and then trainings and educational sessions. So there's all these different things we can be doing. No one person can be doing all these at the same time. So if you're trying that, I would recommend Chantel's take a moment, take a breath. But having a community around you organizing. So you're doing a few of these things and doing them so that your message is being, repeated to the different audiences but still in alignment with what you're trying to accomplish, is, really helpful. And I do want to mention the getting published in media. There's a lot of talk these days where we're trying to figure out our digital strategies and how to reach out to grow our audience online, social media, newsletters. But it's important that we don't forget about traditional media. And just before this, we were talking with Laura at Bay Area 350, and she said that they're building an op-ed team because what they found is that electeds pay attention to op-eds in local news. So as much as that, that isn't as, I don't want to say so much fancy as, oh, what's our social media strategy? You don't want to overlook those really powerful, targeted, you can get in a good, solid message to the people that you need to hear it. So that was really neat. I need to learn a little bit more about the op-ed process. Can we go to the next slide, please, Tori? So effective messaging, we have some do's and don'ts. I just want to preface this by saying that most everybody here, if not everybody, were already somehow involved in this movement, whether it be climate, whether it be social justice, or specific to utility justice, or some combination. So when we talk to each other, we use different language than we will with the rest of the world. And I would probably say we are a very tiny percentage of most people. So we get used to talking how we talk with each other. And then we take that same conversation style out into the world. And sometimes we may not recognize, but it's not met with the same enthusiasm as when we're talking to each other. So I'm just giving a few reminders of these when you're talking to people who are not already activated. And even if they are, it doesn't hurt to follow some of these, but so remembering to lead with shared values, especially if your audience is mixed, as in they might not automatically agree with everything you're about to say, but everybody's going to agree that, our utility company should not be able to, cause wildfires and then just get away with it. Who doesn't agree with that? Everybody's going to agree with that. All right, we're all on the same page. We'll go to the next thing. Another thing that's important to remember is say what we're for much more than what we say what we're against. We want to be sure we're not invoking that negative framing. I call that the I didn't eat your donut concept. If you walk into the room and your partner or your kid or your roommate just out of the blue says, I didn't eat your donut, the thing you're going to think is, oh, was there a donut and did this person eat it? So if we're saying solar panels, houses with solar panels are not making utility more expensive for houses without solar panels, it automatically gets the person thinking is like, well, is there that? And that's kind of what they walk away with. So we don't want to necessarily come in with talking about the negative false point when we're making our own point. It's much better just to say, hey, these are all the ways we're saving money. This is all the ways that all neighbors benefit, even if not everybody has solars, and also how it can and should lower the price of energy when more people get renewable energy. So again, focusing on that, say what we're for, success stories are really important. If you're talking to other change makers, we need to know that, hey, this has happened somewhere else and look what they did. Another huge one, use real world terms. So when we're talking to each other and we talk about, the parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere on a given day and the smog levels and the output and the transmission of the, if we use words like pollution, and here we go. We have some examples here. Let's see. So clean air. Everybody can relate to clean air, and that's such a good feeling goal. So when we're talking about, we don't necessarily want to say, the carbon dioxide is we want clean air, and this is how we get it. When we talk amongst each other, we might talk about ratepayers. Nobody identifies as a ratepayer themselves, even though we all pay rates. We're people. So we just use these words. Pollution is much better known than carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, all those things. So Another thing we need to remember is to keep, no matter who we're talking to, even each other, to remind ourselves to talk in the active tense. Corporations are polluting as opposed to communities are being harmed by pollution, because pollution is not the enemy. It is, but pollution isn't happening to us. Climate change isn't happening to us. Those are effects of what people are doing, decisions they're making so that they can make more money, as we've been talking about this whole time. So always remembering to say who's doing what, not who's being the recipient of something that's just happening, because that just reinforces our own and people's feelings of, oh, this is just the way it is. So we talked about some of these other points, name the villain and the motive, again, because the villain here is the corporate executives who are putting profit above people and health and safety and the environment. And then tangible solutions. We never want to just leave people with, and there you go, there's the problem. People need to be able to know that they can do something about it, especially with something as ominous as utilities, where we might feel like, well, that's such a big thing. What can I do? Well, if there's a city, something local, a city council meeting, a protest, a conversation, talking to neighbors, writing a letter, these things, just so that at the end of the conversation, they know, I can do something. Haha, I have agency. So I could go on and on about messaging, as you can probably tell, but that is, I can leave it off here. We're going to be doing some breakout rooms pretty soon. So, so we have one more slide, the talking points. Knowing your audience, I think, sort of sums most of this up. Knowing who your audience is, what they care about, and what they're going through. So if there's, a recent weather event, you talk about, the weather. If there is, if a supermarket is closing down, you talk about community gardens, just something that is tied to what impacts the person you're talking to or the group you're talking to. So
thank you, everybody, so much for being with us today, for caring about doing something about utility justice. It's just a lot of appreciation for wanting to show up and learn how we can spread the word and talk to our communities about these issues more. So huge thank you, and good night and good evening, good dinner and good night.